Hello there, welcome to the PCG Voxel primer. In this primer we have a PCG system that allows us to edit the world in a voxel-like manner, and we can also paint on these surfaces as well. Another thing we can do is actually change the meshes on these walls at runtime, and that's also replicated. So if we go and add a late joining client here, they see those meshes as well. So this is a replicated system. We use fast arrays in C++ to ensure that only the edited voxels are sent to connected clients. So this is a late joining client here, and he can go and paint these surfaces as well. And then this is the server on the right here, also editing the world. And so that is a little overview of what this does. Let's go and take a look at the saving as well. So I've just quit and reopened, and this is all saved. So it's nice and simple setup here, just saving the materials on the surfaces keyed by their location, as well as the removals and the additions. Let's create a new voxel world from scratch. So jumping into our folder, we've got the BP voxel PCG. We'll drop that into our world, set it to 0. And then we'll take our voxel expansion, add and subtract, and we'll create the add for starts. Let's drag this to 0, 0, and then just scale it up a little bit. Now when we hit play, you can see I've already got some save data in my level from when I was playing before. Now we have our basic volume. What we can do with this volume is actually just create multiple of them. And it works very similar to old school level editors. And now when we hit play, we can see that we have this little world that we've created, and we can actually post edit these, which is really cool. Let's take a look at the Voxel PCG properties. We have the cell size here, which is the default size of your entire generation. Then we have a scale parameter that we can control to increase or decrease the overall scale. Now we have the wall rotation. So if your wall mesh is offset, you can control that here. We have our floor mesh size. So these are the meshes that are creating our floor, and knowing the size allows us to position it nicely. And then we have a floor offset for a little bit of artistic control over where that ends up sitting at the end, just in case you need it to be raised or lowered slightly. We have a ceiling param, so if you want to do a game that has this kind of top-down view, you can use the ceiling param here to do that. We then have the ceiling mesh size and ceiling offset as well. So similarly, this is just for artistic control in case you want to lift or lower this particular property. Then we have the meshes that are used. So we have the wall mesh here and the default material. For example, I could use the world grid material instead if I wanted to. Let's create a cell that's a little bit smaller. We're going to create these 200 by 200 here, and we're going to have the short wall. And it feels a lot more like Minecraft now. So we have these voxels moving around, being pushed, and of course we can change the materials on these. And one thing you could do with your own game is you could actually make it so that this knows it's an edge, and this knows it's a top, and this would be grass, and this would be ground, and that would be pretty cool too. This is how that might look if you use a per instance gradient for their bounding box. And so you can see it looks a lot like popular games, but we do have this constant banding. And so another way to achieve this is to use the vertex normal and dot product that with the up vector and then step that, and you have this kind of Z up kind of logic. So let's compile that and take a look. It looks a little bit different, but it's still pretty cool. So this will be shipped with the plugin. So take a look in the materials folder and you'll see that. And one last thing that I want to mention is this PCG slot save here. So do make sure that you set that correctly. Otherwise you're going to be setting the save data for other levels. And you can configure how that behaves with more blueprint, like using the level name, for example. So from here, we can go and take a look at our other level that we have. We have this tall level here. It's got the 2x1 grid size on here. We've got the ability to change these windows out again, and we can just play with the world. So it's really quite fun, and it works all replicated as well. So I hope that that gives you a good overview of the capabilities and the setup. Let's go take a look at the blueprints real quick. In our demo blueprint pawn here, we have the compendium of all the different functions that we can call. So we can get the surface overrides for different types of asset. We can get the surface meshes, clear the surface meshes, set them, add expansions, remove expansions, and we can bind to the events of when they change, which we do inside of our Voxel PCG here, which is the core component, is this PCG surface override here. It has a bunch of information on here in the tooltips. So what this does is it basically has two PCG, one that is displayed and one that is then loaded on a change, and then we hide the other one. So we have this regen function here, which ultimately calls generate local, and then we have a graph generation finished. We wait 1 frame to allow it to finish drawing, and then we say that the regen is complete and we clean up the other one. Any changes to the fast array inside of the PCG surface override, anytime there's an expansion, a removal, or a surface has changed mesh or material, this regen will trigger. And then when this ends play, it saves. That uses the slot name. And then back all the way on begin play here, we have the loading. So does it have the save game? And if it does, import all of the data from the save into the PCG component. Now, back in our pawn, now that we've looked at that, we have a begin play that shows our mouse and sets up the UI for the tooltips. When we press our left mouse or right mouse button, we will get an expand location or a retract location, and then we'll tell the server to do this operation. And that's the same with painting. So for the keybinds 1, 2, 3, 4, we have this function here and these two functions here. They have these get paint locations and the server calls for which type of action that we want to perform. So you can obviously recode this however you like, but the core concept is there are some replicated functions. The PCG component is replicated. It uses fast arrays. It's very fast and efficient to have thousands of data points in there. And then we have the functions running on the server and then trickling down to the client through the bindings that we listen to here. This happens on server and client for everybody. So that is everything to do with the setup, and then we have some math in here to determine where we want the final location of a expand or retract to be, as well as in the paint function. We actually have a classify voxel hit function that comes from C++ that basically makes sure that we're getting a point on the grid that matches the wall, floor, or ceiling that we're touching, and then we use the grid size for the current PCG that we're looking at. So that's what allows us to paint all over our world in a 2x3, and then also go to our other level and then paint this one as well in more a 1x1 fashion rather than the 2x1 fashion at the other level. Now you can of course put whatever meshes you want in here. You can do all kinds of things. You can do ruins, you can do dungeons, you can do houses, you can do interior streets and things. The world's your oyster. I hope this is a cool tool for you and your game development journey. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the plugin. Let me know how it goes. I'm always on hand for assistance. Thanks.